Good morning, everyone. Lots going on as usual. Here's a quick update on the story I was talking about yesterday. Some people are saying send the postcards, the free postcards that Canada Post is sending out, the taxpayers of the country are sending out to all the citizens of the country, for free to stay in touch or something. And people are using those postcards to mail to the Prime Minister to tell him to resign. So a lot of them are, it says, Dear Justin Trudeau, please resign right now. Thank you. Please resign. Please resign. You would never be ready. Resign. Dear Justin, resign. Oh, this is a long one. So there's two tweets involving this. 8 postcards. Worth a little read. There's a lot of people who are doing this of their own volition, and it seems to be kind of a 2021 meme, right? Like, yes, the Free Canada Post COVID postcards. Send those to the failed leaders that we have because they're awful and ridiculously brutal. Awful leadership. Awful. Here is a quick example of Sweden. They never had a lockdown. They never had mask mandates. Some people were trying earnestly, really hard, pushing, trying lots of different tactics with me, sending me emails, coming on my forum and talking to me, saying, here's a really well put together case for Sweden. You're not here. You don't know. I'm in Sweden. These lockdowns are coming in Sweden. Neighborhoods are locked down, blah, 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 blah. And my point was that the government never put that, maybe neighborhoods did, but the government never did that. The Swedish government, I don't think, imposed a Sweden-wide lockdown. Certain areas maybe, but not the whole thing. So now Sweden's got one of the best rates. Well, here's Fat Emperor. He's a Irish statistician, I believe. He's well known in Ireland. He says, Sweden with no lockdown and no mask achieved status of being one of the best performers in Europe for minimizing excess mortality. The real metric, the crucial metric. So no matter the lies, deceit, and propaganda that we have suffered, this is the last word. Yeah, they did a good job in Sweden. And Texas is open. Here's the governor of Texas. He says, I just announced Texas is open. 100%. Everything. I also ended the statewide mask mandates. Mississippi's open. Mississippi to allow businesses to fully reopen and mask mandates. Here's Quebec. 3 cars for this one curfew denying person. It's after 8 p.m., sir. Don't you understand there's a pandemic? Right? What do you think this person's crime was to be surrounded by 3 police cars? Yes, they were out after 8 p.m. Yeah, welcome to Canada, everyone. It's a free country until COVID gets you, until there's a virus, and then, I'm sorry, it's no longer free for your safety. Dr. Gill is asking, Ford Nation and Christine Elliott, what definition is your government using to define a pandemic and an epidemic? What criteria must be met for your government to end all of these unscientific and unconstitutional lockdowns, restrictions causing inhumane and catastrophic harm? I fear that there are no restrictions, or there are no metrics in place to repeal any of this stuff. In fact, everything that Ford has done has seemed to be able to fine-tune the right level of crisis, right? Like, we're in this level of crisis. This is the only way we'll maintain this level of crisis. And with whatever cases, right? The public health people saying, we're going to lock down. We might lock down any minute. Some places going into lockdown. Kawarthas for no good reason, right? Muskoka, no good reason lockdown. We've got places open. What metrics are they using? What metric? The emergency brake, so you can go from green in North Bay to lockdown for no reason? Why? What is the purpose of this? What is the stated goal of this? To stop spread of COVID. What is your definition of pandemic? What is your definition of epidemic? I mean, honestly, this is a situation where we're in the dark. We're unable to even understand how we're measuring our success or failure. We're going by the good word of the science table, and it's not such a good word because I'll show you what Dr. Fissman in a minute. We're going on the public health officer's inflated power and ability to unilaterally impose lockdown on an entire region. They're not trained to manage an entire population. And I mean, when you elect somebody, you're saying, I have faith that you're going to do a good job. I think that you represent our values in as far as you won't let the city deteriorate under your watch, right? Or the province or the country or whatever. And when that no longer becomes true, they should be removed. But a health official isn't elected. We can't hold them accountable. We can't say, all right, Mr. Health Official or Madam Health Official, you've done not a great job, so we're going to elect a new health official. We'd like a second opinion. That doesn't work, right? They're either appointed or I'm not exactly sure how the down ticket, like the municipal or the the Wellington Dufferin Health, how does that person get into that position to be the public officer of health, like Mercer or Davila or whatever? And the power that they're using, how is that meted out? Like, how is that metered out? Is it the health board that has to agree with what Davila or Mercer does? Or are they just unilaterally powerful enough to say, I appreciate your input, health board, but we're going to do it this way? Like, I don't understand, and maybe that's my failing, but I don't understand how powerful they are exactly, but it seems very powerful. They can take ownership of a restaurant in order to shut it down, which is interesting, which happened in Toronto. They can mandate masks in an entire city. They can get Costco to... So the mask mandate has clear exemptions in law. It's in the Reopening Ontario Act. If you go to the Reopening Ontario Act and open any one of the red rules, or whatever. Red is where we're in right now, so that's the one I chose. So the red rules, and just Control F masks, and you'll see the mask exemption is very clear, right? If for health or safety reasons you want to take off the mask, you are exempt from mask wearing, okay? So we've got a situation where in law it's stated that there are mask exemptions, but Costco can create their own laws and say, you know what, those exemptions don't apply here. And that's fine, apparently. I don't know how it's fine, but it's just fine. The schools have come up with their own laws too. So they're saying your kid has to wear a mask, and if not, there should be on online education. That's not okay. That's not okay. What about the kids who are exempt from measles, mumps, and rubella, right? Are they on online education too because they're a danger to other people? No, then neither's my kid. Right? So that's an interesting thing to note as well. So this very, very interesting situation where tiny little people, like I've equated principals or mid-level administrators in education to like a Staples manager, right? Like if you walk into Staples, that person owns the Staples. Maybe they own the Staples, maybe they don't, but they're managing the Staples. So, they know where the staplers are and they know where the chairs are and, they've got the key to the safe and stuff, right? But that's about it. If you wanted to deal with Staples corporate, you're going to the top, right? You're not going to the Staples branch and saying, hey, you better blah, 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 right? So there's a difference there. Schools are middle managers and they're making rules, right? It's welcome to my Staples. You can't come in here without a face covering at least, right? You got to have a thing on, the shield, I don't know, or a mask, right? No, you can say no. It's in the law. You can say no. These people don't get to make rules. And what the heck definition are we using to measure success anyway, you lying liars? It's very, very frustrating. Judges in Ontario, and I've reported about this, and in the last report about this was a different judge, and the different judge said, oh yeah, it was a mistake where she shouldn't have been seeing cases while she was down there. She was, it was a sick parent and she was dealing with this really important thing in Aruba, I think it was. And Aruba has hospitals and training hospitals and things. So plausible. But this guy now, he's Toronto Star's reporting, the Ontario Court of Justice is refusing to confirm if one of its judges is hearing cases remotely from the Caribbean. I mean, why not, right? Like, why not? Yeah, no, I'd like another coconut drink. No, nothing. Carry on with your testimony. Thank you. Another coconut drink. Moving on. I mean, really, it's kind of funny. Twitter is getting in on... It's funny if it was not happening to Canada, right? Like, it's funny if you turn on American news and some state legislature or some state lawmaker, right, is down that, and then you go, ha, 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 right? They're so corrupt. And you move on with your life, except that, ha, 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 we're so corrupt. Oh, shame, right? Sucks. Twitter is tightening the screws as well. 5 strikes and you're out, says Lori Goldstein. New Twitter policy as of March 1st. Tweet misinformation about COVID-19 vaccines 5 times in the opinion of Twitter, and you're permanently banned. You'll get to join the ranks of Trump and all of the other people who have any sense and would not shut up about the sense that they have and got removed from Twitter. So, I mean, we'll see how deep this goes. I wonder if, because I don't usually tweet a lot about COVID-19. I tweet about bad policy around COVID-19. I wonder if that'll extend. The government has said your criticism of its policy is dangerous in that people agree with you and they don't like how we're handling it either. So be quiet. And if you don't be quiet, we'll get Twitter to silence you for us. Right? Yeah. Okay. Moving into schools. Yesterday, the order of this is to show that Stephen Lisi doesn't care. And I think that he's a bad education minister. I had high hopes for him at the beginning, and he's ignored everything and done everything to appease the far left mob, including enabling hiring by skin color in order to fight racism, which I think is racist. So he's ignored a lot of major problems and created more problems in education, and consistently doesn't really address the issues in education. He was asked a question in the House of Commons by Roman Baber, and he deferred to Christine Elliott. He didn't answer the question. But anyway, he's focused on, he says, preliminary results have come in from school testing sites. Of the 759 tests, 2 cases of COVID have been identified. As Dr. Williams has said, the risk within our community is reflected in schools. Let's continue to remain vigilant to keep our schools and communities safe. What's the rate of false positives? Were those two people symptomatic? Did they have symptoms? No. If not, why were they being tested? Is the WHO's direction changed in that people should have symptoms in order to need to be tested? And clinical diagnosis is not achieved with a PCR test. But anyway, it doesn't matter to Mr. Lisi that there's abuse being recommended by the Peel Children's School Board and by Peel Region. And Peel Region walked it back, but Lisi has been silent on this and has not commented. And this is, I mean, this, for whatever reason, this is a personal story for me. It makes me very angry when children are caught in the crossfire. And I think the reason I speak, because I can protect my kids. To a certain degree, I can protect my kids. But kids are being sacrificed on the altar of insanity. And when you say to your child, you have to listen to the rules, you remove their body agency because they don't have somebody in you who's going to stand up and say, if my kid needs to breathe, it says it in the law, they can breathe, they can take off the mask, screw off, they're not going to be suspended. There's a kid suspended in Guelph. So when you reinforce the masking bylaws, the masking rules around education to your kids, you're removing their ability to do what they need with regards to the mask, right? And young kids will listen to you because they'll believe you, right? I jokingly told my son, because he had a hurt arm, that we were going to take him to the hospital and cut his arm off, right? Which is a joke my dad said to me all the time, like, oh, we're going to get the spoon and cut your arm off, right? And it didn't make me fearful. And not that my son was fearful, but he was like kind of worried that we were going to go cut his arm off. And I said, no, I was kidding. We're not going to cut your arm off. And if we did, we wouldn't use a spoon. But we're not going to cut your arm off. But kids believe you is my point. I wouldn't cut my son's arm off with a spoon. But it's so terrible when kids get caught up in the crossfire by parents who believe bad advice from public health. And then we have a government that's this ineffective, that doesn't see this as the danger it is, right? If you've got kids who have absolutely no power because the adults all around them believe that masking is going to be okay and it's healthy and safe for them. This is the Milgram experiment, right? The person in the lab coat says you must continue the experiment, and the person on the speaker says, screaming, please stop, I've got a heart condition, if you keep electrocuting me, I could die, right? The kid's saying, please, I just want to breathe, I just want to take this mask off. It's kind of just deforming my ears, right? Like I'm so small and the elastics are so tight, right? Like there's lots of health reasons, not to mention developmental reasons. Like there are developmental reasons, there are health reasons, there are interpersonal reasons, there are just day-to-day functional reasons not to wear masks. These kids are being abused en masse, and it is so terrifying that the people who are responsible for public health are sitting there going, please continue the experiment, teacher. It's appalling what's happening. And these people, they don't care, right? Okay, here's Roman Baber. He says, last night, Patrick Brown said the pamphlet was a mistake. Good. Peel Region says it's correct, except that one caregiver may isolate with the child. That means parents in the household must split. Peel says this is in line with provincial direction. This is insanity, okay? So this is the original pamphlet. This is the region of Peel. It says anyone exposed to COVID-19 is directed to self-isolate at home, away from others in the home as much as possible. That includes children. For children, we know that a caregiver may need to isolate with them to help with daily living, such as bathing, feeding, clothing, and emotional support. What if there's only one parent? What if parents work split shifts, right? What if parents just can't stop going to work to take care of their kid who's not sick, who is just in a classroom with other kids who may be sick with COVID-19, depending on if the faulty test is right or not, right? Anyway, continuing. This direction, which was set by the province, has been in place to help prevent the spread across Ontario since before school started in September. They're not changing it. Right, and I'll show you the government doesn't care either. So here's Baber's question period. I think it's probably all worthwhile. Here we go.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Minister of Education. Parents and caregivers all over Ontario are shocked and scared by the cruelty of child isolation policies articulated by regions and school boards across the province. Peel and York regions ask parents of dismissed cohorts to keep children isolated from others, including family. Dr. Richardson, an infectious disease physician and professor emerita at University of Toronto, called this a cruel punishment, especially for young children, that could prove significant and long-lasting psychological effects. Yesterday, Associate Chief Medical Officer of Health clarified that the province would like kids to be completely isolated along with one caregiver and kept away from the rest of the family, but use common sense. What common sense, Speaker? How about single parent households or parents working shifts away from home? This government keeps inventing policies that defy human life. Public health has simply lost their mind. My question to the Minister, does he disagree with doctors who insist that child isolation policies may amount to child neglect? Will he immediately put an end to such policies, and will he apologize for the cruelty displayed by this government and Public Health Ontario?
The Deputy Premier and Minister of Health.
Thank you, Speaker. Well, as the member may know, that guidance has been changed by Dr. Lowe. He's not recommending complete isolation for children as a result of COVID, and he has walked that back. He did actually when he attended at the University of Toronto, Mississauga campus, vaccination clinic yesterday. He indicated that his guidance had been misinterpreted, and he clarified it. So it's not as terrible as the member is suggesting. It's very reasonable, considering the guidelines that we all need to follow.
It is as terrible. Sorry about the microphone issue there. It's worse. It's more terrible. The guidance has not changed. This is the guidance that's in place. It's not changed. And it wasn't Dr. Lowe's responsibility to walk it back. It was Miss Elliott's responsibility to walk it back as the Minister of Health, to say very clearly, we would never say to do that to children. Never. It was her responsibility. Absolutely her responsibility, and she shirked her responsibility there. And Lisi, if he was worth his salt, should have spoken up about the kids who he's supposed to represent as the education minister. What an absolute appalling thing to do as the education minister. He should have weighed in on that. Here's Ryan O'Connor. He's a lawyer. He's a lawyer for a firm in Toronto, GTA law firm. He says exactly. He's responding to Anthony Furey, and he says Anthony Furey says it's important to note that Peel's clarification is that a child who was simply in the same room as another kid who later tested positive for COVID must still be sequestered in their room for 14 days. It's just that one parent is allowed to be cooped up with them. So it's not changed very much. Here is Ryan again, Ryan O'Connor. He says, Dr. Davila refused to answer questions about whether Toronto Public Health requires children to isolate within the home, but we know that she's required this since fall and threatened parents with a $5,000 fine for noncompliance. Here's a letter to a parent and the linked guidance. Okay, so here's proof that this is from the province. This is enforced with a fine. This is not use your common sense. There's no way to use common sense because this makes no sense. This is absolutely child abuse. This is telling people to commit child abuse, period. And I know they're saying, oh, we all have to abide by these guidelines. Really? Texas is open. So is Mississippi. So is Florida. So is Georgia. So is South Carolina, North Dakota, South Dakota, and Sweden, just off the top of my head. Why? Prove it, you liars. Elliott's a liar. And so they're threatening the people of Ontario with threat of monetary fine, monetary punitive action. You will be charged money if you don't comply, a lot of money, right? Here it is. Your child is at risk of developing COVID-19 and COVID-19 can be spread before symptoms develop. To prevent spreading COVID-19, your child must self-isolate, which means staying in your home and away from others. Self-isolation of close contacts is mandatory under the Health Protection and Promotion Act, and failure to do so could result in a fine under this act. More information can be found on our website here. And they've got self-isolation. This is their self-isolation checklist, how to self-isolate. Okay, so this is for children. This is not like if you're an adult and able to do all this by yourself. Isolate yourself or stay in your own room as much as possible. Wear a mask or face covering when leaving your room. Maintain a distance of 2 meters. Use a separate kitchen or bathroom. Do not eat meals in the same area with others in your home. Do not share a bed. I had the measles when I was a kid. This is ridiculous. And that's not what happened, right? That's not what happened. When you have a sick child, especially as sick as the measles, you're not gonna say, okay, have a good night, Timmy. We'll see you in the morning, buddy. I'm not allowed to come in there. We're not going to share a bed, but you feel better. Any parent who's had a sick child understands this and understands that this would go out the window. But they're threatening to fine you. Make no mistake, these people don't care, and they're not changing their position. Here's Anthony Furey. He says, for your information, Ontario parents, the idea that an entire class needs to automatically be kept at home away from others if one child tests positive is not how it's done elsewhere. Example, here's what BC does. Confirmed case of COVID-19 in a learning group or at school. If a student or staff member is confirmed to have COVID-19 and were potentially infectious while they were at school, public health will perform an investigation to determine if there were any potential close contacts within the school. Learning groups and staff who have interacted with the learning group may be asked to stay home while public health completes their investigation. They'll be notified. School administrators will be notified and request information to assist with contact tracing and provincial guidance on what steps should be taken. So they're asking for provincial guidance, I suppose, or they'll provide guidance on what steps should be taken. But it's not everybody should isolate their children. It's better, at least, right? Here is Dr. Yaff, and she is responding to this. Again, I think all of this is worthwhile. This is the isolation stuff. She says it's just common sense. It's not common sense when it's pain of fine, right? And there is pain of fine. Here we go.
We obviously understand that you can't leave a child alone in a room for that period of time. And so you
But they didn't understand that their guidance led parents to do just that. It was the provincial guidance that trickled into the language of the regional or the Peel region, Peel public school communication. And they're blaming Dr. Lowe and saying Dr. Lowe walked it back, but it's provincial. And they're saying that, oh, well, it was a mistake. What happens if somebody's advice leads to a child directly being abused? What if that person's in public health? What if that person's responsible for the public health of an entire region? Should that person say, oh man, that was a bad mistake, man? It's the same as, benching a fantasy player. Oh, we got 15 points, right? Oh man, shucks, next time, right? That poor kid who got isolated for 14 days, right? Oh, shucks. Just part of the casualties? It's horrific, these people. They don't even care.
You have to use basically common sense and say, if your child had measles or some other infectious disease, how would you handle the situation? And you would make sure that the child, obviously, you're caring for the child, but you use proper infection prevention and control. If possible, you wear a mask, you wash your hands well, you make sure the child is obviously not exposing others in the family as much as possible. Hopefully only one or two people need to care for the child during that period. But you do not leave the child alone in a room for 14 days. So I think perhaps it was just the choice of wording was probably not...
Yeah, the choice of wording and the fines and the threatening language, and the fact that the kids are asymptomatic and the fact that you completely missed the point and completely tone deaf on your response. Yeah, just terrible. These people are terrible. Here's a Toronto Sun article. Toronto Public Health moderates child isolation guidelines. This article goes through basically everything that I've just documented. Everything that I've just told you is basically what's written in this document, in this article, including the policy in BC is different. And I think that I'm not going to read it necessarily, but I think that it's irresponsible of the province to not comment. It's irresponsible of Lisi to not comment. It's irresponsible for for public health, the public health minister to not comment, because this is their failing. This is their failing. This is language interpreted by public health from Ontario Public Health. So by the regional officers, by the public health officers within Dr. Lowe, Dr. Mercer, etc., from the province's guidelines. And not one person said, hold on, this is like abuse, can't do this. Not one. The failings are multiple, but the people who should lose their jobs are the people who let this go out in the first place, on behalf of the children who have been abused because these policies were put into place and are still in place. You can believe that it's not as bad as all that. Listen, I worked child protection. I worked in children's mental health. I've seen the outcomes from people abusing people because they believed that was the way to discipline your kids, right? That's how you do it. That's what my parents did, and I turned out just fine, right? So you lock them in their rooms, and you wear a mask if they're sick, and you make sure they stay in their own room and don't come into the bed and get comfort from their parents, right? And don't see their siblings, and don't eat in the same room or anything like that. Listen, I had measles, and I stayed in, I think, my parents' bed, but I don't remember the whole week because it was pretty wild. Measles is not so great, but I saw my siblings. I saw both my parents. My parents continued to go to work. I'm talking about when I was like 9, right? Like this is a long time ago. But absolutely nobody recommended masking or gloves or PPE or anything like that. I think that probably would be scary for a child. It's awful. It's awful what these people are doing. Okay, moving from COVID, we're going to get back into COVID. We're going to go back and look at the hotels because we've got some updates for that. But first, I wanted to show you this. Upper Grand School Board investigates after online class interrupted with racial slur. That'll drive the clicks, right? The racial slurs in class. So people are bombing the Google Meets and the Zoom meetings. Don't they have like lobbies? Don't you have like, as a moderator of a room, don't you have like a lobby where you can control who's coming in? It's like, oh, I don't recognize that student's name. I won't let them in. But instead, what's happening is, first, they're blaming the victims. So students are in class and they're being exposed to racist slurs, inappropriate language, and pornography, grade 4, right? And they're blaming the victim here. Here it is. First, we continue to stress to students the importance of not sharing these links, said Looney. Loney. She's an Upper Grand District School Board spokesperson. Similar hacking incidents have also been taking place in neighborhood regions and around the world as the use of online learning platforms increases. Yes. But last month, a grade 4 Google Classroom in the Peel District School Board is said to have experienced an incident where a hacker displayed explicit pornography images in the middle of French class. A few months ago, a user hacked a University of Guelph Zoom class and spewed racist remarks that were heard by all students and instructors in the class. If I was sending my children to school and I got a letter that said there is an outside chance that your child will be exposed to illicit pornography and potentially racial slurs and inappropriate language during the course of the school day due to our need to use online learning. My question is, how have you enforced online learning on a population from kindergarten to grade 12? What reports or studies do you have that it is educational for kids in kindergarten to, say, grade 5 to be in an online class exclusively or even temporarily? What's the learning advantages to this? What kind of resources does it need compared to classroom resources? How much does it cost compared to classroom resources? Right? Compared to the amount of a usual classroom, how much does it cost to deliver this, including teacher and resources, et cetera, et cetera? Online resources are expensive too. Raz Kids subscriptions, etc. And what are the chances of my kid being exposed to illicit pornography in the middle of French class during online school versus in-class school? Is the French teacher going to put on a Pornhub video for them? No. Oh, okay. Well, so it's much less in regular school? I'll take regular school, thanks. Do we have a comparison that shows what are the potential consequences of online school? What the potential learning potential is compared to bricks and mortar school? There's none of these studies. They haven't done these studies. They've done this, again, back to the education minister. They've done this because of an emergency they haven't really proven. The all-cause mortality is about the same. So they've pushed this for an emergency. The kids have been abused. They've been exposed to pornography. They've been exposed to inappropriate language and racism. And we're being told to continue to abuse our children by masking them. Welcome to the Ontario government, despite the fact that multiple places in the world are open. Texas, and I won't list them again, but my goodness, right? How can these evil people continue to think we are so stupid? We're not stupid. So I think that it's interesting that nobody is even asking about holding these. How do you hold these people accountable, right? Like, how do you say it is inappropriate to experiment on an entire population through forcing them to do this online education? It is not appropriate to experiment by exposing these kids to pornography while in class. It is not appropriate to experiment with these kids by exposing them to racial slurs during class. This is an oops, right? Just like the abuse was oops, I guess they'll do the same thing here, right? Oops, right? We didn't mean to abuse them, but I guess we'll just keep abusing them. Ha ha ha, right? Okay, on February 19th, PHAC, moving into hotels, was unable to provide any data to parliamentary committee regarding why hotel quarantining was necessary. Reading the transcript, one could reasonably conclude that there might not be any. Michelle Rempel did PHAC subsequently provide data, and Michelle Rempel gives this brief presser yesterday, calling on the end of the isolation gulag hotels, prisons that the government of Canada is running to discourage travel in or out of Canada to when you return to Canada. It'll be interesting when we have an internet like China, where we're not allowed to access places like Florida because they're too free and we're not allowed to talk about that. I hope I'm wrong about that. I hope we maintain a semblance of a free internet. But I fear that I'm right. Here we go. Here's Michelle Rempel.
Time for the Liberals to permanently end this program. Instead of this bungled, mismanaged program, we urge the government to scrap it and replace it with a more effective system of enhanced pre- and post-arrival testing for international travelers and better and safer enforcement of the at-home quarantine. We can protect Canadians from COVID-19 without subjecting them to this type of deplorable and un-Canadian treatment. This is not who we are as Canadians. We can protect Canada from an influx of new cases by using the tools already at our disposal, pre- and post-arrival testing and at-home quarantine. This mandatory hotel program has been bungled and needs to be ended now.
I'm surprised by the stumbling speech of Michelle there. I wasn't expecting that. The thing is, I don't like playing the COVID game. If you can get out of playing the COVID game, that would be better than playing the COVID game. Because if you play the COVID game, of course we need vaccines. Of course we need contact tracing. They've failed at contact tracing, massively failed at contact tracing. They've failed at pretty much everything. Like everything with regards to COVID. The vaccine rollout has been terrible. AstraZeneca has been a boondoggle. Everything, the travel restrictions, the land border, the fact that don't wear masks, they don't work, masks are mandatory, closing borders doesn't work, viruses don't know borders, and now we've got these travel restrictions. And now the Conservatives are saying like, oh, we can manage with the restrictions we've got in place. We don't need to have all these terrible restrictions in place. Is this art of the deal, right? Go further than what you want, COVID hotels, to settle at 14-day mandatory isolation and blah, blah, blah in your home. And Canadians will accept it now because the alternative is a $3,000 hotel stay if you've got more than just you, right? And okay, moving into masks. Here is currently, so they're testing in school boards, testing healthy people in school boards. Currently 20 cases in Upper Grand, 6 in Catholic boards, 13 classes closed in Upper Grand District School Board, 6 in Wellington County. So treating kids like prisoners, wearing masks all day doesn't work. Mask efficacy is something above 90%. Way more than 90% probably. And so we're still finding cases, healthy cases in schools. What's the point of all this? I'll tell you, it's to keep us locked down. Here's Canadian Armed Forces. It says, protect yourself, protect others, wear a mask. You know what's interesting? I just figured this out, and I'll show you because I think it's important. They're trying to take data away. They're trying to remove our ability to come to conclusions by ourselves. We need them to come to the conclusions for us. I've been taking a picture every single day of the Guelph lockdowns, and this is nothing new to people who watch my show. I've got the little slideshow here you can look at, Christmas Day all the way to today. And I've missed a few days here and there. I missed yesterday, and I'm darned upset that I did. But I'll show you the difference here. Okay, so this is December 28th, and you can see number of people in the hospital and fatal cases. This is information that is pertinent and interesting. Okay, 6 people in hospital, 13 fatalities. And let's fast forward to today, yesterday, or Monday. Okay, so here is Monday. This is what it looked like on Monday, March 1st. Okay, and there were number of cases in the hospital in Guelph was 4. Today, newly resolved, they removed the number of cases in the hospital as of March 3rd. Isn't that interesting? Why would they do that? Why would they do that? Where can I find that information? This gives me no information at all. Newly resolved cases? 15 newly resolved cases? Where's the number of people in the hospital? What in the world is going on? They don't want us to have information. Okay, moving into vaccines. Here is an angry Albertan complaining that COVID-19 vaccination will be required for the job. This is P-Vine Inn and Suites, and to all employees of P-Vine Inn and Suites, COVID-19 vaccination required. Vaccine is becoming available for High Prairie, subject to your date of birth category, and so they're mandating this for a job. It's coming. Here's Mayor John Tory, and he's saying he's spending money the city doesn't have and arranging selfie station at vaccine centers, giving free advertising to large multinational drug companies while he has no plan to get gyms and small businesses reopened and kids back to playing hockey in the city's arenas. This is, those poor kids, right? Kids who are like 8 to 13, 14, kids who don't have the ability to ignore some rules, or are fully dependent on their parents. I mean, it's good for kids who have parents who are half decent, who are good, or who are reasonable, right? And not all parents are reasonable all the time. Sometimes there's conflict between parents and kids. But imagine having like a parent who's struggling, say maybe they lost their job or lost their livelihood or their business or something to that effect, and they're a single parent and they have multiple children, and maybe the relationship with a couple of the kids isn't so good, and their sanctuary, their safe spot, so to speak, is school or wherever. And in that situation, is it acceptable to completely remove the ability for a child to access their usual routine, right? Like school and all of that other stuff. And like, is an emergency like this worth everything we've done? What have we gained from it? Right? A year in, what have we gained? All we've lost is freedom. We haven't gained safety. They can't point to any success and say, you know what we did? Look at this. Look at this metric. Look at how much better it is. Right? They measured some really quiet earthquakes. I don't care. I don't care. Ontario seniors won't receive the Oxford AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccine since there's limited data on its effectiveness in older populations, the province said Tuesday, but it remains unclear who the shots would go to. I think we got the excess because the people in Britain don't want to have the AstraZeneca one either because it's not as effective as the Pfizer one, apparently. So there's vaccine. I mean, we've got these, it's like Sony and VHS. Beta and VHS. And what happened with Beta and VHS is you'd go to the movie store and you'd see like 3 versions of the popular one with Beta and 15 versions of the popular thing with VHS, and all the VHS would be gone. So you'd be like, man, I wish we had Beta. But when you had Beta, you could only get like the popular movies. You didn't have a choice of the other movies, right? That's how VHS won, because people widely adopting it. But when we've got these 3 vaccines, it's like there's going to be health impacts from each one. So it's going to be like these 3 classes of people that are going to be accessing government something or other. Because there's going to be like in the H1N1 vaccination, there was 60 people who got narcolepsy, so they stopped the vaccination, whatever. They stopped the vaccination rollout because of the narcolepsy and because of it manifesting in some children. And so there's, in that situation, there's one class of injured people and they're accessing the being made whole by the government. But in this situation, our government is saying things like people involved in the Danforth shooting from that terrorist have a right to sue the drug manufacturer, or the gun manufacturer. But people who are injured by these vaccines, all 3 different ones, developed outside of Canada mostly, those companies are immune. You can't sue them if you get hurt from this vaccine. And also you have to take the vaccine. If you want to work here, you got to take the vaccine, right? We're in a situation, I mean, like, usually I have good news. I don't know. Maybe I should do a good news show one day. But it's very frustrating because it doesn't seem like that release in October was wrong. It seems like it was horrifyingly right. And, well, Texas is open, so that's on the list again. Yay, right? Okay, moving into Dr. Feisman. I called him a quack yesterday, and if I had a quacking soundboard thing, I would push the quacking soundboard button right now so that it would quack. Here's Al, and he says, it turns out the medical officer of health in London, Dr. Mackey, emailed Ontario Science Table member Dr. Feisman last spring saying that Feisman's modeling was inaccurate and causing undue stress to Canadians. He was, of course, correct. OST models have been largely inaccurate. Here's the list. Here's the letter. It says, David Feisman, this is taken from David Feisman's phone, and he shares this on Twitter as like a, he's proud of it. Like he's in a Twitter war with this other doctor who's expressing concern. Okay, here it is. Dr. David Feisman, we're taking strong and appropriate steps to protect the people we serve. Your modeling parameters are speculative and dangerous. We already have many people panicking. The extreme and blatantly inaccurate rhetoric about up to 70% of Canadians becoming infected is pushing many more people into irrational behavior. Please do some reading, about the behavior of populations under significant stress. People cannot follow reasonable public health directives if they're freaking out. In the worst case scenario, your actions could lead to violence. Please adjust your language and clarify that this sort of incident has never before been seen with such an illness, even in Wuhan with the current outbreak. Thanks for considering, Chris. And instead of being like a reasonable human being, so Al says, what did Feisman do? He not only constantly bullied Dr. Mackey on Twitter, but was also privately sharing Dr. Mackey's email of concern with random people on Twitter. Is this professional behavior? This is how Feisman was recruiting his cult members. This is the guy who's advising Doug Ford. He's taking money from unions. He's taking money from Pfizer and I don't know about AstraZeneca. I think Pfizer and Moderna have given him money, and EFTO has given him money. He's advocating for school closures, despite the fact that we've got evidence that it's not necessary and it's damaging. Not just not necessary, it's actually damaging. And this is the behavior of him. This is a tweet from him. He says, hey, Health Mac, here's a cool picture of me sniping from the sidelines. Reminds me of your role in acute care settings. He says, more excellent feedback from a senior public health figure, who thinks this is all about NBD. Chris and I disagree on lots of things. Yeah, sniping away from the sidelines. I'm working in a hospital right now, bruh. And just the use of the bruh, this guy's not professional, and he's got a conflict of interest a mile wide, and he should not be advising anybody, and he probably shouldn't be working in a hospital. I mean, that kind of ego can't be easy to carry around. Like, does he push it around in a wheelbarrow? Or does he have assistants carrying it around behind him? I'm not sure. I don't know. I haven't seen him walk around, but whew. And it must smell. That kind of ego really stinks. Okay, here's Patty Haydu, and she says, federal government pays $3.5 million in funding for vending machines that dispense safer opiates. What's funny? I've made this point before, but in 2019, the safe opium injection site in Guelph killed 7 people. In 2020, it killed 15 people. More than 100% increase. Man, what do you think 2021 is going to do? I'll tell you, we've had 4 opium deaths in 1 week the other week, in January. So maybe that was the other month. But I don't know what our numbers are since right now, but like compared to last year. So I don't know year on year, January, February, March. I don't know where we were at in 2020 in March. But it seems to be a bad idea to have a vending machine that dispenses safer opiates. You just use your handprint. It scans your handprint and then it pops up a safe opiate. I don't know. It seems kind of odd. This is weird. This is an interesting update to a story I've done before. The cops who shot up the Onslow Fire Hall committed no crime, rules SIRT, but the Serious Incident Response Team's report contains apparent geographic errors and doesn't give a full account of the scene of the shooting. It was the building that caused the problem. The building will be indicted on Tuesday, right? Obviously it wasn't the police's fault. This building was resisting and needed to be shot. Clearly. Remember the tow truck cartel and the violence that we've seen in Toronto for the competition around the tow trucks in Toronto? Well, the Ontario government weighing in on it. The Ontario government announces a joint force operations team to address violence in the towing industry and introducing a tow zone pilot on designated sections of provincial highways. Okay, I don't mind the tow zone pilot. That's kind of a good idea. As far as I understand it, it's like an area where the tow trucks will I don't know about congregate, but it'll be more legal for them to be there rather than doing the work on the side. The ongoing violence in the towing industry is unacceptable, which is why our government is taking action to make the towing industry safer through strengthened oversight and standards, says Kathleen Mulrooney, Minister of Transportation. Man, when you've got cops stealing radios and opening businesses and having a conflict of interest, owning like a car rental business and a towing company and a company that provides, like a black market company that provides information to tow trucks for a monthly fee. I mean, lucrative as all get out, right? Like lots of money, lots of different income streams. I think that's the word I was looking for. But not so good when you're a cop, right? The conflict of interest is kind of uncomfortable, right, Dr. Feisman? Oh, you don't care because you're an arrogant, ego-driven doctor. Right? Yeah, okay. Sure. Anyway, very interesting stuff happening in Canada, very interesting stuff happening in Ontario, very interesting stuff happening in our school boards and our courts. I wish I had good news. Easter's coming, right? I look forward to being prevented from worshiping because reasons, I think. Like when we can point to places that are open and say these places are open with no ill effects, and we have people who will on social media triple and quadruple down on the next wave is coming and we're all going to die and you are going to kill grandma personally because you're not wearing a mask, despite the fact that there's no evidence to support that, other than faulty models. I think that that's weird that we're in that situation. I think that it's weird that we're all being pushed, and like I think as much as frustrated as I am, as active as I am on pushing back on this as much as I can, and I mean I can only do so much. There are people who are better organized than I am, who have funding, who have multiple staff members, who are just looking for anti-hate or anything to whip up a fuss about. And lockdowns seem pretty easy, right? And they hurt everyone, right? Except for a very, very small group of people who get to continue to keep their paychecks. And I don't think teachers have it easy. It would be a nightmare. It would be an absolute nightmare. If you went to school to be a teacher and you had to sit in front of a laptop for 8 hours a day, nightmare, complete nightmare. It's a complete reversal. And they're being screwed by their unions. But the unions are using it to increase the numbers, right? If you need more teachers, more dues, the unions get more money and people make more money and so on and so forth. Everybody's motivations come into question, right? But man, I don't blame the teachers. It's the power. It's a few steps away from them, but they're the ones who are in a bad situation having to deliver these bad policies. And the fact that having it pointed out that the policy actually tells parents to abuse their children, and having the Minister of Health and Deputy Premier say, no, it's not that bad. No, you misunderstood. It's not that bad. It's that bad. With threat of fine, it's even worse than she thinks it is. And the fact that she doesn't grasp that, the fact that she doesn't understand it, is so concerning. Anyway, there's so much that's concerning today. Sorry for being a downer. My goodness, I should have a happy thing to end on, but I don't. So apologies. So thanks for watching, everybody. Check out CanadaPoly.com. Check out CanadaReport.co. Check out SpeakingMoistly.co. And have a wonderful, wonderful